Special counsel found, as you mentioned, that the retention of this material in unsecure locations did present a national security risk. But he goes to great lengths to draw a contrast with the classified documents case that is now being prosecuted against former President Donald Trump. Robert Hur says in this circumstance that there was strong cooperation from President Biden. Also, it was possible that some of these documents marked classified may have been moved to different facilities without his knowledge. Some were recovered in situations where it seemed clear that they had been forgotten about. And finally, all of this put together was likely to create enough reasonable doubt that jurors would not convict on the mishandling of classified records.
Catherine, thank you so very much. I want to turn now to our CBS News legal contributor, Jessica Levinson. Jessica, the natural question, understandable question for our audience, if no on former Vice President Biden, now President Biden, and yes on former President Trump, why?
I think just as Catherine was explaining in her excellent reporting, because there's a difference here in terms of the level of cooperation. What we have in the case pending against former President Trump are allegations that he obstructed the investigation, that the Department of Justice, that the National Archives said over and over again, we want those documents back. And he said no, that there was willful retention of the documents. So do we have two people who had documents that they should not have had? Absolutely. But the similarities really end there, because the story with respect to current President Biden is one of eventual transparency, of saying, at least publicly, I welcome this investigation. Come look in my office, come look in my residence, and of complying with the investigators. That is the dividing line. When we look at the public reporting based on President Biden, is there any question that he shouldn't have had these documents? Absolutely not. But is there any question that he engaged in the same type of willful retention and obstruction that allegedly occurred with respect to former President Trump? No, there is not. Again, that is the dividing line here.
Jessica, I want to share with our audience some pictures that are contained in Special Counsel Robert Hur's report of areas in which these documents were stored. I don't know how to read them other than to say, this isn't how you do it. And they are similar in that sense to what we saw for former President Trump. Things of sensitive nature in places that don't read or look at any level to be sensitively guarded. Your thoughts about that?
Exactly right. There's no question here that President Biden should not have retained these documents, that this is not how you retain these documents, and that this is inappropriate. And as Catherine highlighted from the report, that it presents national security risks. But so then we have to ask again, why no criminal charges? Because, and I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it's that difference between saying, I did something wrong, I have documents I shouldn't have, you are welcome to continue to investigate, here's what I know, and here's the key to my front door, come on in. And with respect to the allegations against former President Trump, I won't give these over. Allegedly, I will try and hide them. I will try and cover up that I had them at all. That's where you see a difference in why in one case we're looking at federal criminal charges. In another case, we're looking at a special counsel report saying you should not have done that.
Jessica Levinson, thank you very much. I want to turn now to our senior White House correspondent, Weijia Jiang, who joins us from the North Lawn of the White House. Weijia, this report was a concern, a meta concern for the Biden White House. No charges, but some harsh language.
Some harsh language, Major, that shows exactly what the White House and the president has said all along, that he made mistakes with regard to how meticulous he should have been. But he also said that the intention here matters, and he never intended to have any classified documents. And even though we have not heard directly from the president yet since this report was released, he did issue a pretty bold statement through the White House counsel's office when we know that he declined to assert any executive privilege over any portion of this report. So what does that mean? In practical terms, it means that if he had requested to assert executive privilege, some portions of this report could have been redacted. There could have been black lines. We have seen this in the past in other special counsel investigations in which certain portions are kept from Congress or the public in order to preserve the ability for the president to have confidential discussions or for matters of national security. The president decided, no, I do not want any of this report to be redacted. And so in saying that, it tracks with what he has said before with regard to the investigation. And he has said, I have nothing to hide. Please come to my house. There's no need for search warrants. There's no need to make this more complicated, which is exactly what Jessica just said, because the president says it's not just about whether he had these documents. It's about whether he meant to have them, and B, what he did when he realized that he did have them. And as we've been talking about, he says he did everything right after that, and that should matter. And apparently the special counsel agrees.
And Weija, it's also worth pointing out, and perhaps you can offer a little bit more information about this, the president was interviewed by the special counsel, correct?
He was. 2 full days of interview. So, again, he wanted to share as much information as possible without saying I did something wrong. In the many public remarks that he has said about this, he has said that he should have done better, that his staff should have done better to keep those documents and turn them in where they should have gone. Now, Major, it's one thing for the president not to face any charges in this case, but he does face some political challenges. And I have spoken with some Biden aides who are very well aware that the Trump camp is going to do everything it can to bring this back to light and to say that there is a level of hypocrisy here, because they're going to argue that these 2 men did the same thing, but the 2 outcomes could be different and that it's unfair. And so now they really have to try to push this message, Major, to reiterate why these 2 cases are different and why, it matters how you handle the sensitive, top secret information after the fact that you realize you have it. But it could be tough, right? Because, at the end of the day, you do have 2 former presidents, former vice president, a sitting president, with documents that they were not supposed to have. But they are aware of this challenge, and they do plan to address it head on with very strong messaging about how the president did everything right with regard to how he handled this after he realized he had those documents.
Did everything right after he realized he had done something wrong. Weija Jiang at the White House. Robert Costa, there is a show and tell component to this report. We just had some pictures of unsecure document holding at the president's garage. There are some pictures up on the screen now of the Penn Biden Center here in Washington. There will be a lot of examination of these pictures and their underlying relevance. I know it's been just a few moments. Have you seen or detected anything from the Hill, meaning Congress, from Republicans on this decision from the special counsel not to charge, and your overall appraisal of the political environment in which this decision will land?
Major, this report marks the end of the special counsel's investigation, and he is not issuing any decision on charging, not moving forward with charges of President Biden, but it is only the beginning of the political battle over the conclusion here to not issue charges of President Biden. On Capitol Hill, my top Republican sources have said for weeks now that if there was not a prosecution of President Biden, should there be evidence that suggested he willfully retained documents that were classified in nature and didn't handle things properly, they might take it into their own bailiwick, take it to Capitol Hill to pursue possible impeachment. This is a House GOP majority that has only in recent days pursued impeachment of the DHS Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, and there has been already a sprawling investigation of President Biden, his family, and the family finances. So you put on top of all of that this new special counsel report, and you see ammunition potentially not only for former President Trump as this campaign heats up, but for congressional Republicans to swing the spotlight onto President Biden. And even if he defines his conduct as something that was not worthy of prosecution, and he cites this report as something that backs up his position, because of the details in the report, you can expect this to be a constant refrain for Republicans in the coming months. Before
we go back to Catherine Herridge at the Justice Department, Robert, I just want to ask you this because you brought up the earlier effort this week. Feels like a long time ago, but it was just a couple of days ago. Alejandro Mayorkas, the move to impeach him in the House failed. And there were some Republicans who are saying it didn't meet the constitutional threshold. You have heard, I've heard, some House Republicans uncertain about the case against President Biden. Does what happened in the Mayorkas impeachment effort in any way, do you think, discourage Republicans from going that far on President Biden?
There are some Republicans like Congressman Gallagher, Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin, who have been averse to using impeachment as a tool at this political moment for Republicans with such a narrow majority in the House. But Mike Johnson, this new Speaker of the House, is facing enormous pressure to scrutinize Biden, to possibly move forward with impeachment charges. And this was a constant threat to his predecessor, Kevin McCarthy, politically. If you don't take dramatic steps, we'll take dramatic steps against you. That's the context of which all of this is beginning to unfold just this second, just this hour on Capitol Hill.
Robert Costa, thank you. Catherine Herridge, I want to go back to you at the Justice Department. You and your team of producers have had a bit more time to read through the report. Your other conclusions or observations, please.
Well, Major, a few things stand out. We're still combing through this 345-page report. One is that the special counsel found that Joe Biden retained classified records from his time in the Senate, and I would emphasize that as a sitting senator, he would have had no authority to remove highly classified materials from what's called a SCIF, or secure facility. This investigation, we say, is broad, but I think some of the data can help you scope that. It's 173 interviews, 147 witnesses, 7 million records were reviewed by the special counsel. It goes on to emphasize the importance of the interview with President Biden in October, but it also notes that there were significant gaps in his memory of those events, and those gaps, or the lack of information, would not sit well with the jury if it ever went to trial. It would create what the special counsel called reasonable doubt. Just finally, there's sort of a bottom line for people who work in the intelligence community. You can't emphasize enough the sensitivity of top secret information that was involved in this case, also what they call compartmented information. That's highly classified intelligence. Sources and methods are especially fragile. They can include human spies, they can include satellite imagery. So to have this information held in unsecure locations, this is a very real risk of compromise. And the intelligence officials I know say it's deeply disappointing to see any senior member of an administration behave in what they describe as a cavalier fashion with this highly sensitive information.
Catherine, I don't want to put you on the spot, and if you don't know the answer, please just let me know. But in the report, is there any information that sort of gives a number to documents and a number of notes? And is there, from a classification point of view, any relevant distinction between a document itself or a note taken by a principal about something that was classified?
You know, we're still going through the special counsel report. We haven't seen a specific number as to the records that were marked classified. We know from the description in the report that the Vice President Joe Biden's personal notes were voluminous, but you make an important point. In the world of classified information, it doesn't matter whether the record is stamped classified, top secret, or whether it has no marking at all, like someone's personal notes. It's the value and the content of the information that makes it classified. So at the end of the day, it was highly classified information that the special counsel found had been secured in a way that was not in keeping with the protection of this information by a very senior person in administration who would have known the guideposts for doing it effectively.
Catherine Herridge at the Justice Department. To conclude, the special counsel Robert Hur has decided no charges will be filed against President Biden for his mishandling of classified documents, both notes he took and documents themselves, while as vice president and as a senator. Our coverage will continue on CBS News Streaming, your local news, and of course,